Want to get a little bit of an overview over the Snowflake interface and to be more specific about the so-called worksheets, because this is where we will spend most of our time. All right, so when you're logged into Snowflake, this is how it roughly looks like. Of course, the interface can change from time to time, but this is how it should broadly look like. And we can see on the left side navigation that we have here under projects the worksheets, and this is where we are currently in already, and this is also the most important area. Here we will spend most of our time. All right, so what we will be doing first is we are going to create a new worksheet. You will see here a few sample worksheets that are already created, but we will create our own worksheet from scratch. To do this, always when we want to create a new worksheet, we just select, of course, under projects, the worksheets, and then we can in here add a new worksheet. So we just click on this plus button, and here we say SQL worksheet in our case. And as you can see, we can also create Python worksheets and also structure this into folders. In our case, we will mostly be working with SQL. And then once we select this, we can see that this opens this worksheet. So a worksheet is basically where we write our code. And here we have this editor, we can write our code, and then we can just automatically execute commands in here. And also we can return back to this worksheet to access those commands later on as well. So how this works in here is we can just, as we can see already in here, run a query. For example, I can say I want to select a table. So we want to just see the data in the table. And to do this, I can also already see that there's this autocomplete. So just by hitting tab on my keyboard, I get this little help with this autocomplete. And then I can say star. So this means I want to see all of the columns of a specific table. And then I can say from, and now which table, I can specify which table I want to see the data from. And of course, which is actually the data in our database, we should first check this out. And we can do this on this navigation under database. So here on the worksheets where we are currently, we see all of the available worksheets, including also some potential folders that we have set up before. So they are here just sample folders and sample worksheets. This is the worksheet that we have just created. And actually, we can also rename this. So we can maybe duplicate it, delete it, or move it into another folder, but we could also just rename it. So I could say something like this, our first worksheet. So ideally, of course, this is a descriptive name so that we understand what we created this worksheet for, and we can easily find it again. All right, so this is the worksheet. And now, as mentioned, we want to also navigate into databases. So here we can see we have two databases already existing. And in case you don't see the Snowflake sample data, you can also just execute this code. So you can download it from the resources in this lecture. You can just copy and paste it, select it, and then execute it. You might want to refresh, and then you should also have this sample database available. Most likely, you will also already see this database, so we are not going to execute this in this case. So how does this work now with those database objects in here? We can see we have two databases. This is the first one, the Snowflake database. Here we just have basically some system tables, some system views to understand our account a little bit better. So this is nothing that we want to dive into now, but we want to have a look at the actual data that we want to maybe work with in the next lectures to learn how everything works here in Snowflake. So to dive into a database and expand it to see what are the objects included in this database, you can just click on this icon, and in here we now see the next level. This is the schemas. So you can see we have also almost in every database this information schema, again some system views in this case, and then we have the actual data. So in here they have a little bit cryptic names, but for example with this one we can also expand this one and see when we expand this schema, in the schema there are then the actual database objects. For example, tables, views, and so on. In our case, we see there are tables, so we can expand it. And now we could see this is the table customer. So maybe we want to have a look at this customer table. So what we can do is we can click on these three dots. And in here, we could say that we want to view the definition. Not so interesting for us, but we want to place in the name in the editor. This just makes it easier because then we don't need to manually type out everything ourselves. And here, of course, let me maybe format this a little bit nicer. We can see now that we have this so-called fully qualified table name. This means the name of the database. This is the name of the database here. We have the schema name, which is the schema name here, and then the actual table name. Everything also separated with these dots. So this is the fully qualified table name. This makes sure that we know exactly which table should be queried. So let me execute now this select query. We can do this in two ways. Either we click on this play button. If I do this, I see there will be, it takes a little bit of time. And then we see we get the result back. And in this case, we can see this is the data. And another way of doing this would be to use Control Enter. So if I do this, just Control Enter on my keyboard, it would also execute the query. And sometimes we have multiple queries in one editor or in one worksheet. Then we can also separate the queries with a semicolon. This is something that we need to do to mark the end of a specific command. And in this case, if we would have multiple queries, so for example, something like this, maybe not customer, but let's say orders. So orders, but then we only want to execute this statement. We can also just select it, Control Enter, and then it would execute only this specific query in here. So these are the very basics about our worksheets and what we can also do if we close this worksheet again. And don't worry, this will automatically be saved. We can see here this was viewed just now, and under worksheets we can always open this one up again. And now we want to dive a little bit deeper into some specific things here in this worksheet, because we see some things around here, account admin, and also the actual compute warehouse. All of that we